Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us today for Resilinc's webinar to discuss the latest supply chain disruption data, as well as the outlook for supply chain risk and ways to mitigate it as we head into Q4 and beyond. My name is Melissa Geringer. I oversee corporate communications for Resilinc, and I'll be serving as moderator for today's presentation. We'll be doing a Q&A at the end of the webinar, so please use the question tab to send in your questions. We'll do our best to cover them today, or we'll follow up with you after. Also, please know that we'll be recording the webinar and making it available to you after the broadcast. So with that, let's go ahead and talk about the agenda. Next slide, please. Great. We'll first be giving an update on COVID-related disruptions from summer through the present, as well as discussing other disruptive events happening and the impact of those. Second, we'll cover new technologies companies are using to mitigate supply chain risk and the latest capabilities to Resilinc's EventWatch and multi-tier mapping platforms. And finally, as I said, we'll wrap up with a Q&A. And again, please use the question tab to send in your questions anytime throughout the webinar. All right, and with that, I'd like to introduce our three speakers. With us today, we've got Bindiya Vakil. She is CEO and founder of Resilinc. Bindiya founded Resilinc a decade ago with the goal to help transform the way global organizations approach supply chain visibility and risk, driving them to shift from reactively addressing catastrophic supply chain events to putting preventative solutions in place through monitoring, mapping, and planning. Next, we have Resilinc's Director of Product Management, Sandeep Ramachandran. Sandeep has handled multiple roles within the supply chain risk domain, such as advisory, product marketing, and product development. Currently, he leads Resilinc's product management in the US region. And finally, we have Shahzaib Khan, Resilinc's Director of Operations. He's responsible for the team that maintains our EventWatch product. Under his guidance, the EventWatch platform monitors millions of news sources daily, alerting Resilinc's customers with notifications when supply chain disruptions occur or are on the horizon. A warm welcome to you all. And again, thanks for our audience for being here. And Bindiya, I'll hand the controls over to you.
Thank you, Melissa, and thank you to Sandeep and Shaz. I'm looking forward to this next hour. Appreciate you and all of your time. Thank you for attending this session with us. So I think just a quick introduction to EventWatch. Shahzaib will be talking a lot more detail about what it is that Resilinc does here that makes us uniquely positioned to report on global disruptions as they occur. Resilinc monitors more than 100 languages across 165 countries. We are, because of our mapping, the largest global repository of supply chain mapping intelligence worldwide. And so as we look at our AI is deployed to watch news and events across the internet on a minute-by-minute, second-by-second basis, we are an early warning system for anything that might occur. So Shahzaib, starting with, let's kind of, because we're talking about COVID, walk us through EventWatch and during COVID, the early days and how we sensed this disruption as you explained all the way in December.
Sure, thank you, Bindiya. Before I jump into COVID updates, I would like to add a few more things that you said about EventWatch. EventWatch, with the help of artificial intelligence processes and people, we mine and annotate information from over 3.5 million sources, 100 plus languages, and 40 plus risk types. And before reporting these events into our customers, all these events are well researched, verified, and tailored for the customer needs. Our customers receive these events as war rooms. It's very important to understand, before we go into COVID updates, it's important to understand what a war room is. Using these war rooms, customers analyze the data, all that data that is mapped in that region or that is mapped by the supplier company that is affected. Customers can also collaborate with their internal teams within these war rooms. Customers can create actions for their internal teams. Customers can also collaborate with their suppliers, within these war rooms to assess impact. Some of these risk types that we monitor are uniquely monitored by Resilinc. For example, lawsuits, very common in automotive for emissions and life sciences for overdose and kickbacks these days. Profit warnings becoming common post-COVID. Recalls common in auto, food, life sciences, and biotech verticals. Labor violations where we covered child labor, illegal trafficked workforce, poor working conditions, etc. Human health, where we cover outbreaks, pandemics. COVID, as we know, is a unique example in this category. We also monitor leadership changes, regulatory changes, any citations or actions taken against the suppliers or their sites by these agencies like FDA and many other in almost all countries. And a lot of other commonly monitored risks that almost all supply chain risk managers would have on their list, like natural disasters, business transactions, and financials. Today, I'll focus on human health and this unique example, a unique event that none of us have experienced before COVID. Next slide. What a crazy year this has been so far. We all used to talk a lot about the Japan tsunami. We used to talk a lot about the disruptions that it caused. Also the Indonesia floods, then the Tianjin explosion happened. We always talked about those events, but then COVID happened. Now, it has been crazy, unprecedented year so far. We first detected this as a mystery disease in Wuhan, China on December 27th. And by January 3rd, it was already an outbreak. Countries like Taiwan were already implementing restrictions, something we never experienced before. And one interesting aspect of this event is the large variety of disruptions that it brought with it. Almost all industries were affected in different unique ways. For example, the automotive, aerospace, oil, mining, transportation, metals, minerals, and many sectors suffered due to an immediate decline or drop in demand. And why this happened? Due to the aggressive nature of lockdowns and restrictions that were implemented without really measuring the impact. And then there are a lot of industries like life sciences, healthcare, food, consumer goods, retail. That's an unforeseen increase in demand. And they really struggled due to the capacity issues in labor, logistic, and raw materials. So some sector, a part of the sector struggled because of no demand, and other industries struggled because of very high demand, especially the PPE sector, the companies that make personal protective equipment. And again, due to the aggressive nature of lockdowns and restrictions. It took authorities some time to really figure out which verticals fall under essential and how their products lead into other products that are actually essential products. The supplies of PPE suffered a lot, and because PPE was one key equipment or one key material that was essential for resuming production, a lot of other companies also suffered because of the lack of supplies of PPE. And then you talk about all these outbreaks among labor. PPE also struggled because of that as well. There were a lot of restrictions, a lot of rules and regulations that the governments were applying over manufacturing sectors, and companies had to comply with them, and that's where they struggled as well. For example, Malaysia initially restricted hiring of any non-Malaysian labor, and 14% of labor in Malaysian PPE industry are actually foreign labor. In metal and mining industries, I always quote copper. It was very interesting to see what happened in the copper market. Countries like China had stopped accepting copper shipments. All major projects stopped, the consumption dropped significantly. Copper smelters struggled to offload their byproducts. No one was buying their byproduct, so they were not able to make more copper. And gold, as we know, it always reacts to uncertainty and fear, and the prices of gold increased significantly. Tungsten shipments, tungsten is found in many countries, but there's only one country that processes that metal, and that's China. And there were no shipments coming out of that country. So a lot of countries in Europe and America, they saw an increase in prices where a lot of tungsten was sitting on the ports in China. Next slide.
Great. So Shahzaib, this is very interesting. I think it would be fair to say that the ripple effect of the Q1 and Q2 disruptions of 2020, we are still feeling those. I think Shahzaib will talk about what is currently happening in wave 2, but because of the 100% number, meaning every company experienced some type of disruption, that disruption takes time to trickle through the supply chain. And even now, it's very difficult to get products in a timely manner. As consumers, we see extended lead time, we continue to see rationing, allocation, and restrictions on how much you can purchase at the grocery store for certain types of products. If you're in the middle of a construction project, you would have some delays and unanticipated delays on receiving material. And so a lot of contractors and other projects are experiencing delays. So we are certainly not out of the woods yet. Shahzaib, talk about the second wave. I mean, the second wave starting July, certainly the team has been tracking since as we started to see the surge again. What are the EventWatch observations?
Yeah, in the second wave, which actually started from July onwards, the nature of disruptions changed slightly. These reimposed lockdowns are, well calculated and limited in nature. The restrictions affect gatherings. There are restrictions on restaurants. There are restrictions on indoor services. And the good thing is that manufacturing and services sectors are operational. But what concerns us in Wave 2 is the financial issues that lead into revised forecasts. A lot of companies are revising their forecast. A lot of companies are laying off people, furloughs, shutdowns. There's a significant increase in shutdowns because companies are restructuring, companies are cutting production, companies are issuing profit warnings. We are noticing bankruptcies, we are noticing business sales. So of course, all this, because of what happened in first and second quarter, all these very aggressive shutdowns and restrictions. And then in wave 2, one very big issue, especially in PPE industry, is limited workforce. Companies are getting guidelines from the local authorities, what percentage of labor you can have at a time. And labor capacity is another big issue. And of course, there's a big risk of, outbreaks among labor as well. We've also noticed a lot of events where companies had to either cut production or shut down because of an outbreak among labor.
So Shahzaib, talk about as you look at the current situation with different countries, right? Mm-hmm. We are tracking suppliers across more than 160 countries, 450,000 sites. So let's go into what we are seeing, some differences between wave 1 and 2, and what we are hearing from suppliers on the platform.
Over 83 countries so far. What our data shows that over 83 countries have reimposed some sort of restrictions due to wave 2, and this is post July, starting from July actually. It's a long list, but some top countries would be United States, India, UK. UK is getting worse as we know as we speak. Vietnam, France. France is also getting bad. China, they've been noticing these outbreaks on their border regions. Australia, Germany, Israel. They all reimposed some sort of restrictions because of second wave, because of spikes in the number of new cases. And one interesting thing that EventWatch is doing in wave 2 is we are not waiting for a lockdown. We create a war room for our customers even if we notice a spike or even if we notice a red zone. So a lot before a lockdown is actually issued, our customers already have this war room ready for them. And just for wave 2, we have created over 40 war rooms where suppliers have confirmed their sites are impacted due to these reimposed restrictions, due to production cuts, shutdowns, layoffs, profit warnings, outbreaks among labor, force majeures, and some sort of issues at a sub-tier supplier. A lot of companies are still confirming impact to their sites, especially aerospace and automotive sectors.
Speaking of disruptions related to COVID, the world at large does not stop because of a pandemic. We have continuous disruptions from many things that EventWatch tracks, even in a non-COVID world. Shahzaib, talk about some of these events that have characterized the unbelievable and unprecedented year we've had.
Yeah, when I was working on this slide, I was very surprised what I saw in the data. We all know that COVID is a unique example, a big black swan event that is keeping us busy. We are all very much consumed by the magnitude of this event, but I would like to highlight that non-COVID disruptions have not paused. There are still known COVID disruptions. And what, what I saw in the data, the EventWatch data, is very surprising and alarming. Over the past 9 months, Resilinc reported on 4,200 disruptions, and 54% of these led to a war room. Now, let me remind you that Resilinc creates a war room when an event has the potential to affect suppliers' sites directly. These are mapped sites on Resilinc platform. 4,200 disruptions, it's already a 14% increase over 2019, and an entire quarter is still pending. In 2019, we reported on 3,700 disruption in an entire year. Only 39% of these created a war room. In 2020, the percent of war rooms has already increased significantly from 39% to 54%. And we still have a full quarter remaining. Now, hurricane season. And I'm sure we all heard about La Nina conditions already. We saw some La Nina effects on the Pacific coast and in the wildfires. Hurricane season will also be affected because of La Nina. It is expected that it will be a longer hurricane season, and it's also expected that the cold season will be severe as well because of La Nina conditions. Now, some other big events that we covered in 2020, non-COVID events, the Michigan Dam burst that happened in May, it had 110 N-tier sites potentially affected, 21 sites confirmed that they are impacted. The flooding events in China and Japan in July that potentially affected over 1,800 N-tier multi-tier sites. And then this Beirut explosion that had 152 multi-tier supplier sites mapped, it was a major event. It may not It may not have impacted many companies as the Tianjin port explosion did, but it was a reminder for global supply chain, especially for the companies that don't have early warning systems and the suppliers' data mapped.
This is very interesting, Shahzaib. So let's look at just 1 week in 2020, just 1 week worth of disruptions. Walk us through what we're seeing, Shahzaib.
Yeah, in my view, to be honest, this is an eye-opening view for any supply chain practitioner. This is just 1 week. Can you move to next slide, Bindiya? Yeah. So this is just last week. 191 disruptions were reported in just last week, and 30 of them were factory fires. This is a 7 days worth of data, 30 factory fires. And an interesting observation is that the fires at waste management facilities, they have increased significantly. I have a team that is actually looking into the root cause, why it's happening. But this is very interesting. Why so many fires out, at waste management facilities? And one of our customers almost shut down because the only qualified site in that region was affected. And talking about fires in 2020, so far we have reported over 700 fires, and that's just past 9 months. We still have 3 more months remaining. Now, 20% of these 700 fires happened at mapped supplier facilities. Some of them actually severely impacted multi-tiers in supply chain. That is why, it's important to have this early warning system, because you may not realize that a shortage that you're working on right now, or maybe a force majeure that you're working on right now, it was actually triggered by a factory fire 2 weeks ago, which you never heard about. And for example, this fire in Japan at Nitobo, it happened at a tier 3 supplier, and a lot of our customers, experts, appreciated the early warning from Resilinc, without which they wouldn't even know which tier 1 or tier 2 suppliers are impacted. And there was another example where a minor fire at a chemical facility, initially the spokesperson said there is no impact, everything is as normal, and after 2 weeks they declare a force majeure. If you don't have early warning system, you won't hear about the fire. You will only hear when the force majeure comes out, and even that if the company sends you a letter. And let me tell you about recalls. Healthcare industry, recall is one of their top event type that they're monitoring. All the hospital networks, all the brokers that supply into hospitals, because there are a lot of recalls in life sciences, there are a lot of recalls in biotech, the medical devices, and a lot of recalls in food. Food also affects healthcare. And then, this factory disruptions, you can see a long list of factory disruptions. We cover factory shutdowns, we cover any kind of evacuation, any kind of maybe a shooting activity or anything that can disrupt a factory. There's a significant increase in factory disruptions as well. This is why it's important that you have this early warning system, which keeps you informed about the event before some movement happens in the supply or demand or the price. Over to you, Bindiya.
Thank you, Shahzaib. This is one of the things that I think, as we look forward at, yes, COVID was incredibly disruptive, pretty much, I think, the black swan of black swan events. It is a good reminder that supply chains are operating in a continuously disrupted world. We don't have such a thing as normal course of business. So as we look at what are companies doing about this, right? So risk as a space has not really been properly invested in. Many companies have not traditionally set aside budget and resources for critical supply chain risk management capabilities, COVID has changed all of that. More companies, as you can see from the Gartner report that came out a few weeks ago, more companies than ever before are going forward identifying supply chain visibility and resilience as their 1, 2, or 3 initiatives, their top 3 initiatives going forward. Now, when we look at supply chain risk, it's a pretty wide term, and it covers everything from, hey, I'm going to reshore my factories, to I'm going to hold more inventory, have 2 sources for everything I buy, have a dual site strategy. When we look at the cost impact to the supply chain of some of these proposed risk management capabilities or approaches, there's a wide variety of cost economic impact. To set up another factory can be multiple years and several $billion in some cases. Holding more inventory can have a multiple hundreds of millions of dollars impact to inventory turns, cash, and working capital. Having second sources, if you can even find and qualify enough suppliers, that itself has a cost because it increases the complexity and the need to manage multiple suppliers, the transaction elements, and the price impact of having splitting volumes. Having an end-to-end supply chain risk management capability grounded in robust data, on the other hand, not hugely impactful on the cost front. So let's shift to Sandeep Ramachandran. Sandeep, talk about an end-to-end supply chain risk management approach. What is the best practice there? How do companies who want to invest in this look at covering the end-to-end workflow without adding billions of dollars in cost or hundreds of millions of dollars in inventory to de-risk their supply chain?
Sure, thanks, Bindiya. Yeah, so let me, as Bindiya was mentioning, let me walk you through this well-adopted approach for risk management. Again, as I say, it's well-adopted. Customers have been on an ongoing basis getting the value out of this approach. And if you look at it, risk management pretty much has 2 different sides to it. One is the reactive side, and then the other is the proactive side of things. And I'll talk a little bit about each of the side here. Let's start with the reactive side, which is whenever an event happens, that's when you're reacting to a situation. So your suppliers may be potentially affected. So it's more of a reaction from your side when you get to know that there is an impact to one or several different suppliers based on an event or a region getting affected and so on. So what is important, the most important thing in the reactive side of things is having that timely detection of the event, number 1. And number 2 is having a virtual war room, which is immediately available with all the information that entails about what is the impact, which are the suppliers affected, what are my parts affected, which of my supplier sites are affected. And it's not just the tier 1s that you want to talk about. It's also about the sub-tiers. What are the sub-tier suppliers? What are the sub-tier sites in the region that's affected? So having all this information is so much critical because you want to be effectively prioritizing all these risks as early as possible. And it is not just about prioritizing risk. You want to be you want to be collaborating with your suppliers and internally at the same time. And that's where having that constant interaction with your teams, having your emergency teams together, having working your way with the suppliers to ensure that they are not affected. If affected, how do you take the gaps, or how do you close the gaps? Having that automated system, asking your suppliers whether they are impacted or not, that's a big game changer, because when you're in an event, you want to be getting, time is of essence. And at that point in time, you want to be having the suppliers coming to you and letting you know that, hey, I'm impacted. This is the downtime. That builds that collaboration in place. Or if they're not impacted, you want to be getting to know that information as early as possible so that you can manage your time and you can prioritize which suppliers need to be worked upon rather than just spending time on the suppliers who are not affected in the first place. Now, on the other side, the proactive side of things is it starts with your multi-tier part-to-site mapping. And note that the part-to-site mapping is important because you need to know exactly which of your products, which of your suppliers are affected, what kind of parts are affected in this case. And along with that, you want to be looking at what are the different external risk factors that are affecting my suppliers. And what do I mean by risk factors? These could include things like what is my supplier's recovery capabilities? What is my supplier strong in their business continuity plans? Do they have a proper sourcing plan? Do they have proper cyber assessments? What is their CSR capabilities? Any third-party sources, such as, let's say, the financial scores of the supplier, are they stable? And this could be from a Dun & Bradstreet risk score, or it could be rapid rating risk scores, and it could be anything, even your internal performance scores for your suppliers, such as on-time deliveries, or it could be the quality-related issues and so on. So bringing all that information in that one place allows you to quickly identify and prioritize which are my top risky suppliers, risky parts, what are my single points of failure, what are the bottlenecks, so that you can immediately take actions to close the gap. And this is where both the reactive, proactive converge to the same action, which is you need to take a real action to close any kind of gaps. And that's where you need to have proper workflows, mitigations. Every company has different kinds of playbooks for various scenarios. You want to be able to quickly bring all those playbooks, get to the action, work with your suppliers, the commodity managers working with their suppliers, close the gaps, and go get to the next item, which is making your supply chain much more resilient. So again, this is a very comprehensive approach which our customers have taken. And over the next few slides, what we will be doing is going into the details of some of these elements and giving you more insights as to what you could do to make your supply chain more resilient. Yeah, so before I go into the specifics of the product, what I want to do is talk a little bit about our journey, the vision of our product, and the solution. And if you think about it, the real idea behind supply chain risk management is to improve the overall supplier's performance. And for having an effective risk management, what is important is, number one, you should be able to accurately predict. That predictability has to be really high and accurate. And number two, there should be less variability in what your decisions are, what your informations are. And to have this high predictability and low variances happening, you want to be having a very comprehensive data intelligence, as well as a smart technology, which can take all this massive amounts of data to take smart decisions, and everything tech-driven. So here at Resilinc, we are cloud agnostic, we are mobile driven, and at the same time, for companies which are in verticals such as defense and aerospace, we have deployed the entire solution in on-premise as well as a private cloud, as you call. And with the pandemic and the way that things have been going on, as we call the new normal, it is now more than necessary for us to have all this information in one place on the fingertips. And we believe that the future of supply chain is all about having that intelligence on the go, having it on your fingertips. All your processes, which are manual today, are more converted to an automated way, so that it's more effective and efficient in your day-to-day work. And over the last 10 years, so this is actually the 10th year of Resilinc. So over the last 10 years, we have grown, matured as a supply chain mapping company. It's in fact our core still, the supply chain mapping. And we can proudly say that we are the most successful in that. And over this course of time, what we have done is we have mapped more than 100,000 suppliers. More than 100,000 suppliers are onboarded in our system, millions of sub-tier connections, 450,000 sites that have been mapped worldwide to more than 160 countries. More than 3 million parts are being actively monitored and mapped to these 450,000 sites that I just talked about. Shahzaib and Bindiya was talking about EventWatch, 100+ languages, 44 different event types, 10 years of event information and supplier information. That's a massive amount of data repository out there. And along this journey, we have been also collecting other different supplier capabilities and assessment. As an example, business continuity plan. That's something that we have been collecting since 2013, and we have more than 35,000 BCPs right now from the suppliers directly, which means that suppliers, the next time a new customer comes to the Resilinc platform, suppliers don't have to start working right from scratch. They can right away share this business continuity plan that they've completed, and that pretty much eliminates the assessment fatigues that we have always heard from the supplier side. Now, the direction that we are headed towards, so what we are now very much excited is adding that next level of operational information, such as the inventory information, the lead time visibility, the PO impact and delay predictability. And as we speak to various companies out there, what we have learned is that so much of all this, the operational information, is so much still manual, and there's so much of great opportunity for us to bring that seamless connection of all the supplier information to this one place, put in a lot of NLP, deep learning, predictive capabilities, understand what kind of variabilities are there, understand what kind of pricing fluctuation, lead time variances are there, and ultimately helping us to answer the main questions that we always have. What is that? That's how much cash do we want to run the business? How much inventory do we need? How many people do we need? And ultimately improving the overall customer satisfaction. And that's the direction that we are headed, and we are proud to take the lead on that direction as well. So Shahzaib, let me just bring you back in to talk a little bit about the event monitoring, and if you can walk us to, how a flow would look like on a day-to-day basis, an event happens to all the way to managing the event.
Sure. Thank you, Sandeep. Yeah, let me step back a little bit and tell you about this unique feature that Resilinc offers. This feature allows you to leave your laptops at home when you're on PTO because you have it in your pocket, you have it on your mobile. It's called Supplier Impact Confirmation. When Resilinc provides an early warning on an event and creates a war room for its customers, at the same time, Resilinc also alerts the suppliers that have sites in the affected region. For example, an earthquake happens in Milpitas, California. You have your war room, you know all your supplier sites, N-tier suppliers, N-tier sites, parts, all the alternate sites, alternate parts, products. You have all that data on your mobile. At the same time, Resilinc also created that event for the supplier as well. So while you're assessing, supplier is also assessing how their sites are impacted. Now, the collaboration happens on the mobile. Supplier already has this event, customer has this event, they're both on mobile. Customer is possibly sitting in an airport, sends a message to the supplier, asks them what is the update. Supplier goes in, checks the event and says, I am not impacted, and event gets closed within minutes. Or supplier says, yes, one of my sites in Milpitas is affected. By 2 weeks, we will be down for 2 weeks, and this is the reason, this is why we will be down. As soon as supplier responds, system updates everything for you based on the 2 weeks impact. Your revenue at risk is updated. Your downtime is updated for that supplier. Now you can start creating your mitigations. You can start creating the action items for your internal team. You can also ask more questions. There's this instant messaging system, we call it Collaboration Center, available on the mobile, where you can send instant messages to your internal team, to your suppliers, ask more questions, bring the event to the closure as soon as possible. We have around 80% response rate from suppliers for some of our high-tech customers, around 70% for life sciences customers. Of course, it depends how much that collaboration happens, and how quickly a customer responds to an event also affects the rate of responses from the supplier. Recently, I would quote a customer here recently. Of course, I'll not name the company, but a customer contact mentioned that I was on PTO, and guess what? I did not have my laptop with me this time because the EventWatch mobile app is packaged so well, I didn't have to log into my desktop, my laptop again and again to assess these events. Sandeep, over to you.
Thanks, Shahzaib. That was interesting. I did learn about that the quote that the customer gave, and in fact, I did hear a lot of our customers coming back, and I've seen a very much our uptick of usage of our mobile app, because it's pretty much, as you said, an entire package of all the information in one place, so that you don't feel left alone. You have all that in one place to take actions for you. Thank you. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about multi-tier. Going back to our approach, multi-tier, we talked a little bit about multi-tier, but multi-tier part site mapping, if you think about it, is a real game changer in risk management, because a lot of unknown risks that become uncovered when you go all the way to the part level. So which material is being manufactured by which site, etc. When you go to that level, that's when you get to know the real essence of what kind of risks are out there. And it is not just the part level, it is actually also going all the way to your sub-tier supplier, not just the tier 1, it's also the tier 2s and the tier 3s and the tier 4s. As you go down, that's when you start to uncover a lot of these different kinds of risks out there. And I briefly talked about what part site mapping is, but let me give you a little more detail as to what that means, which is you have your product, you have your materials. Now you need to exactly know which of your materials are being manufactured by which supplier, which locations, what are the primary sites of that supplier, what is the recovery capability of the supplier, what are the alternate sites in case the primary site is down, if you want to switch the production or let's say an assembly to a different site, which is the alternate site. What is the recovery capability of the alternate site if you want to switch it to the new site? What are the subcontractors who are dependent on the supplier? Who are the sub-tier suppliers, the bill of materials of the supplier, and so on and so forth. So once you have all this information, it gives you a lot of this intelligence so that you can start seeing different patterns and uncover the different bottlenecks. And if you see a few examples here, very interestingly, you can see how often do we see that 3M, DuPont, BASF, Thermo Fisher, etc. is not just a tier 1 supplier. It is also a tier 2 where it can be a lower tier supplier. Another example is, let's take one supplier is a tier 2 supplier to multiple different tier 1 suppliers. And this is a very common scenario in semiconductor subcontractors who are very much getting dependent on the tier 1 suppliers. The third one, as we all know, the dreaded diamond supply chain, which is that one sub-tier sitting out there where all the tier 1s and tier 2s are all dependent on. That's a danger sitting right in front of you. So if that supplier is impacted, that sub-tier supplier is impacted, you have a lot of, it's kind of a ripple effect. A lot of other tier suppliers are getting affected. And we have tons of different case studies. For example, the paint or the pigment issue, or pigment, the shortage that was there on the paint market, for which affected the auto industry, Baxter plastic bags where there were shortages, and it did pretty much affect the healthcare industry. So getting to that multi-tier part site mapping is of utmost importance. And in fact, the visual that you see on the left-hand side is actually a snapshot from the Resilinc system, which shows how that complicated system or the complicated your network is interconnected, and how you can immediately understand what are some of your bottlenecks, which is actually highlighted by the red circle that you see in the middle. And for companies who are just getting started, or if you are further down the mature curve, you have different options to map your supply chain. So if you go to the lowermost level, which is you can get started by just using the publicly available information. In fact, Resilinc has tons of publicly available research information available for you, which means right from the get-go, you're not starting from a zero, you're already 30 yards ahead of the game, and you have that information which will drive your supply chain risk management forward. But there are, of course, pros and cons with using just the publicly researched sites and sub-tier information, which is, in all cases, the data might not be very relevant to you. For example, I know 3M as a company has around 100+ different sites. And if you had only the sales offices available or sales office information, I don't think that's much valuable. Rather, you want exactly which manufacturing facility of 3M is connected to you. That is what you would want to know. And that's where you go to the next level, which is with maybe some minimum resources. You could start going to the supplier, collecting some of this information. You could just ask which material is being manufactured at which site. With some minimal effort, you're getting a little more value from where you were by using just the publicly researched information. And for mature companies, what you want to get to is all the way up to the sub-tiers. You want your tier 1s, tier 2s collaborating with together. If you think about it, it is actually a joint program where each of you have vested interest and you're working together to improve your overall supply network. So you want to be getting your suppliers to provide this information and add a tremendous amount of value to your whole supply chain risk management program. And Here I want to talk a little bit about, what are some of the additional things which are very relevant when you want to take some business decision, very important actions. For example, the inventory and lead time visibility. When you are happening, when there's an event or when you're doing some proactive risk assessments, you want to be having this information on your fingertips so that you can quickly decide what are the right actions, what are the right business decisions to make. And what we right now have is the ability all the way to the material level, be able to collect what is the inventory capability, what is of the supplier, what kind of quantities are required, how are they changing, what's the minimum order, and you could refresh it as frequent as weekly basis, or you could have connections of API connections with suppliers data to have the most available information on your fingertips. Similarly, lead time. So how much time is it taking for the supplier to ship the materials, the lead time information, etc. Again, that's another thing that's available right for you as well. So we talked about events, we talked about mapping. So for each and every supplier, in fact, not just supplier, for each every site, parts or product category, etc., there is a supplier risk profile page or a risk profile page that is created. And in the risk profile page, starting with the risk, it's actually a composite score that's calculated based on the different risk factors that you would have put together based on your risk policies. We talked briefly about what are the different risk factors like BCPs or recovery or location scores and so on. And the beauty of it is of the system is that you can actually configure the risk factors based on your risk policy. So you can assign your thresholds, your criteria, what's acceptable, what is not acceptable. And at the end of the day, you get a risk score for each supplier, and then you can easily prioritize which suppliers are more important versus least. And in the same supplier profile page, you get to see what are the trends, how the scores have been changing. You get the supplier sub-tier dependencies, you get the path sites, etc., and also benchmarking information as well, which is how is this supplier doing better or worse than other suppliers in the same category or across the board in your network.
I think just one quick thing to add, which is for the direct materials and supplier management experts in the room, is that when it comes to supplier scorecarding, a lot of companies look at supplier level scores. I think one key thing that Sandeep talked about, which is that these scores are inherited down to the supplier sites as well as the parts that you buy from the supplier. So if you're working at a part number level in direct materials, it's important to know if there's a high financial risk associated with the supplier who supplies that part, or if that part is made at a site that has a high natural disaster risk profile. So the ability to inherit these scores down all the way to part number level and then roll up all of the scores back up to the supplier or product level is something that is very unique. This is something that Resilinc is very tailored to a direct materials use case.
Thanks, Bindiya. Now, what is the reason of all these risk information available for you, right? At the end of the day, you want to be able to quickly identify and prioritize which are my top risky suppliers, what are my top risky parts, what are my top risky sites, which needs some kind of an action, some kind of a mitigation so that you're reducing the gap or reducing the risk to make it more efficient. So that is where the workflows, or if I may call it, or you can call it as a smart risk register, comes into picture. And the way that the risk register or the workflows evolved is that we were talking to our customers, and we got to know that a lot of them are still dependent on traditional Excels and very manual and cumbersome processes. So we thought that how about making this much more effective, seamless, much more smarter, and that's how we worked with 3 different customers from 3 different verticals, life sciences, high tech, and FMCG, to understand what are their requirements, how do they do the mitigations on a day-to-day basis, and that's how the entire workflows have come together. Now, getting into the workflows itself, what it allows you is based on the suppliers and sites or parts, or even if it's an event, you could take that event, you could now add them as a part of your mitigation process. And the interesting thing is you can actually onboard and bring in all the different playbooks that you have in place. So for each company might have different kinds of playbooks for various different scenarios. Each playbook might have different kinds of tasks for different organization members like finance or the procurement teams and so on and so forth. So you could bring all that playbook into one place. And when you launch a workflow, when you launch a mitigation, you could easily launch that playbook where the tasks are now assigned to the different members automatically. You could assign a start date, end date, and now once the project is created, there are some dashboards and automated notifications and reminders that allow the users to think about, there's some work that's pending, there's some tasks out there, and with the dashboards that's available, what it allows you to do is you can actually report it to your executives. And the beauty of it again is you could do this reporting at any different level. For example, if you want to see the progress of all these different tasks at a business unit level, or if it's at a category level, or if it's a specific site or supplier, you have that filtering capability, which allows you to track the progress and bring that more visibility into your actions that are being taken to close the gap. And what is also very much important here, and I want to talk a little bit about how pandemic has actually brought everyone together at the same time. It has made us realize how real-time communication collaboration is so much important. So we have been using Slack or Teams just for our internal messaging, but just imagine if you had a Slack or Teams that connects your entire supply network together. Now, that is what Collaboration Center, which is you can seamlessly collaborate with your tier 1 suppliers, with your internal teams, with your sub-tier suppliers. You can exchange information. You don't have to any longer depend on emails, because if someone in your organization leaves, that information goes with them. There's no past information about the actions and decisions taken for a supplier. Now with the Collaboration Center, everything is contextual, which is if you're in an event, you can do your assessments, you can prioritize everything in one screen, at the same time communicate with the suppliers, different suppliers in the same page itself. So it's made as seamless as possible to have that real-time communication with your suppliers. Yeah, so let me talk. I know we are running out of time in a few minutes, so let me try to switch gears a little bit. So this is a recent service that we have launched. It's called as the Supplier Screening Report, and this is going to be a big value add for procurement and sourcing organizations, where we have this tons of information available about suppliers, events, and so on from the last 10 years. And what this does is if you provide us a list of suppliers that you're interested to learn about what events have affected the suppliers in the past, what are some of the things that have affected the suppliers, we would be looking at all the research information, all the events we have, and providing you this report. And if you look at the different event types, right from labor right violations affecting that supplier to quality problems, any price fluctuations that have affected that supplier, any allocations that supplier has put out there in the past, all that information would be captured in one place. And I said, procurement organization, this would be for sourcing and procurement organization. This is going to be a value add, because before you decide on a new supplier, you have all that information available on your fingertips, so you can take a right decision rather than taking a step back later in time. Okay, so now we talked a lot about what we have done so far, and there's an exciting future in front of us. Over the last 1 year, we have been very aggressive and very aggressively moving forward in terms of product innovation. And we talked about the latest Collaboration Center and workflows that we released, and it's not done. Still moving forward. There are a lot of automations, a lot of broadcasting capabilities with suppliers, etc., that is coming up. So we are excited about that. The next thing that you see here is the purchase order predictability. And this is another interesting thing, because it's using a lot of AI and natural language processing to look at past events, tons of purchase order information, supplier impacts, and so on. And this model that we have created, it's actually working with a customer, Western Digital, that we have put together this model. And this model is actually reviewing all the past years of purchase order, whatever delays that have happened, what kind of events that have happened, and trying to predict in the future an event happens, what are the different POs that are going to be affected? Are they going to be delays? And you want to be knowing this information in advance, because you don't want to be just sitting to just realize about the delay after the delivery date or the confirmed delivery date has been passed. So this is again, as I said, a game changer that we see, and we can proudly say that this is unique to what Resilinc has, and this is not something that anyone out there or any systems out there have put together, because this is a completely new dimension that we're looking at, which is past events plus all the POs together, and then predicting what POs could be affected in the future. So very, very exciting. And the outcome that we have seen so far from the model that we have, it's been so accurate, and we're excited to see how that goes. The next one here is the category manager focus portal and the ease of use. So over the years, Resilinc is like 10 companies put together. There's the mapping, the research information, there's the event monitoring, the workflows, the collaboration center. So there's so much comprehensive information and things that you can do that we are trying to take it to the next level of simplifying things, making it more seamless, bring in more predictive things throughout the portal. For example, we are not trying to give you a number, let's say a risk score of 3 for a supplier. Rather, we want to tell you prescriptively, saying that this is a score 3 because the supplier has ABC reasons, and this is the action that you want to be taking. So category manager portal, the ease of use, as we call, that's another exciting thing. Commodity Watch is leveraging the data and understanding what are the root causes for all the different pricing fluctuations. So that's again using a lot of natural language processing and neural network information to predict that. And we're actually working with 3 different customers to put together this Commodity Watch product. And finally, as you can see, there's a lot that's going on, but at the end, we are trying to convert this whole product into a one-stop destination for the procurement organization, so that they can, at the end of the day, improve and radically change the supplier performance that they have. Bindiya, let me hand it over to you. I know we have just 1 minute, but let me hand it over to you.
Thank you. Oops, sorry. Not sure what happened there. Yeah, so I just at the end wanted to say thank you to Shahzaib and Sandeep for your insights and information. Just a quick offer for those of you who are on the call. Resilinc is super proud to be very successful in mapping supply chain. Many companies right now are experimenting, trying to evaluate how to get started. We have a very quick plug and play way to go get this going for you. Our supplier platform is the LinkedIn for supply chain, if you will. So if your suppliers are already on the platform, we can get you up and running with part site mapping or subtier visibility or both, or also bring to bear some of our publicly available supply chain mapping intelligence for you. So talk to us, contact us at sales@Resilinc, and let us know how we can help you get your mapping program underway. I think we have maybe time for 1 or 2 questions. So Melissa, I'll hand that back to you. Thank you, folks.
Sure, and thank you so much, Bindiya, Shahzaib, and Sandeep. That was an excellent presentation. I did have 1 question come in that I think is important to answer. So somebody asked, on slide 8, it shows that COVID-19 risks are going down compared to hurricane risks. How is that possible, and how is COVID-19 going to affect us in 2021? I don't know if Shahzaib, you'd like to answer that one?
Yeah, so slide 8 actually, am I audible?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay. So slide 8 actually shows the suppliers that confirmed impact through Resilinc or through public domain. The point that this slide is trying to make is that there are disruptions. There are still disruptions by COVID, especially the wave 2, which was kind of slightly unexpected, but it's happening. It's there. It's creating disruptions. But this slide actually wants my audience to pay attention towards the non-COVID disruptions as well. And it lists some examples, some big events that happened where we did receive impact confirmation from the suppliers. Hurricane season is at its peak. So it's important that we pay attention towards non-COVID events as well. I know COVID will continue to create disruptions, but we cannot keep our eyes closed, towards the non-COVID events.
Yeah, and also just to add to that, that slide captures net new. So if a supplier confirmed impact and continues to remain disrupted, we are not capturing their continues to remain disrupted in that chart. So that shows as of the date we receive impact confirmation, the supplier will indicate how long that disruption is expected to continue. That intelligence was not on that chart.
Great, thank you. And I've got one more that I'll give to you guys. Are there any tools to see price impact analysis on raw materials?
So Resilinc offers Commodity Watch as commodity market intelligence. We are currently tracking about 15 to 20 commodities, all the way from copper, gold, palladium, tungsten, zinc, cobalt. Shahzaib probably can rattle off several more that we are tracking. So yeah, if you're interested in these commodities or commodities that we may not have listed in this call, please contact us and we'd love to discuss with you.
Super. And just given the time, I've got one more question. And then again, if you didn't get your question answered, we will get back to you via email later today. So this last question I'm going to do, if my company joins the platform, how do I ensure my suppliers join? Is there still a benefit if my suppliers choose not to join?
Absolutely. And this is the value, what happens in, and I'll talk about this from the standpoint of us working with more than 150 companies, some of whom actually don't have their suppliers do the mapping. They do their mapping themselves in other tools and platforms. What they use Resilinc for is to get all that mapping intelligence, whether it sits in their commodity managers' heads or in their laptops, or it's sitting in your PLM system like Agile or your PO system. Bring it all in a central place, aka Resilinc, and let us monitor those global sites for you that you have mapped. So even if your suppliers are not onboarded, the fact that you have identified global sites where your suppliers are located, we can still put a really robust and central and digitalized risk program in place for you with this platform.
Super. Thanks so much, Bindiya, and you as well, Shahzaib and Sandeep. Thanks so much to our audience for attending today. We hope you found that informational. We're going to be sending out a recording and copy of the webinar after the fact, so please be on the lookout for that. And in the meantime, we hope everybody takes care and stays well. Thank you so much, and we'll catch you on the next one.